Hi, thank you so much for being back with me. We are going to talk a little bit more about conflict, and I know we covered this a lot in the winter category, but in this season in spring cleaning, we're going to talk about conflict again, because remember, we can't replant our garden when there's a blizzard blowing around. But in spring, the warmer weather is here, your relationship is starting to heal, your communication is open again, and it's time that you can talk about the conflict without being so hot and fiery. We're going to talk about conflict resolution in a couple of ways. The first way is really just getting down to the crux. Spring is about healing from the winter storm, understanding what put you into winter, and then recognizing what it's going to take to get back to summer, right? This is the epitome of the spring bridge, to clean out all the things that were left behind in winter to plant a new garden in summer. So when we're thinking of spring cleaning, all of the strategies in spring cleaning do one of two things. They either heal from the winter piece or they rebuild the garden for the summer piece. In this situation, in this video, we're going to talk about conflict resolution as being a little bit of both. So the first thing we need to understand is, who are we in conflict? In the last video, we talked about what our family of origin looked like. What did we understand about conflict growing up? Was our household volatile and loud and angry? Was our household strangely quiet and nobody had conflict and everybody just gave in to get peace, right? Was it something in between? What was that experience for you? Because when you know what you know to be normal, you have to recognize your partner has their own definition of normal, right? So if your house was very quiet and nobody ever fought, but in that house it was very loud and boisterous and everybody yelled at everybody, you can imagine the conflict between the both of you is going to be very muddled, because you will be very quiet, your partner will be very loud, you will probably be terrified of the loudness, they will be terrified of your silence because that must mean something is really wrong, and you just get stuck in the actual semantics of fighting. So in this video, we're going to talk about conflict resolution as an exploratory exercise. So on the chart below, we're going to look at some ways that you can understand conflict in your life. And this is your current life. So how you respond to conflict. In this assessment, I want you to answer, there's a column for partner 1 and partner 2. Is it usually, sometimes, or never? I raise my voice and yell. Usually, sometimes, or never. I let them vent. Do you let your partner vent? Is that a usual, a sometimes, or a never? When they start venting, I jump right in, Where do you fall on all of this? Once you're able to understand this exercise and you look through all of the things, we understand who we are better in winter. Because our stress response brings us to that place of fight, flight, or freeze, right? We will know how we behave in winter by what shows up when we are in winter. So if we are often submissive, if we are often trying to do whatever it takes to get peace in the house, if we are often just giving in, we are freezing, right? And that is not being truthful to ourselves, and it is not honoring the relationship, because you have things to say, you just are terrified to say them because in your family, you didn't talk about conflict. You always pretended things were fine. So it is a learning experience, but I think once you start to see what are your patterns in winter, what does conflict mean for you and your behavior? Because remember, we can feel something and how we behave is something totally different. You can be absolutely raging about something, a blizzard is completely consuming you, and you could just be saying, I'm fine. Everything is fine. And of course it's not fine, but you are absolutely putting up your armor. And that is not a path to summer, and it's definitely not developing a level of intimacy which leads your relationship to that amazing summer love story day, right? To that time of beautifulness. because you're shutting parts of you down. So take a look at this chart again and really be honest with yourself about your coping mechanisms during those hard times, right? Where did you learn those from? Where did they come from? And then what are your rhythms? Like, do you start off really hard, but then at some point you give up? Or maybe you just take it, and then explode. What about your partner? What is their natural rhythm? Because we know anger does not predict divorce. Arguments does not predict divorce. Conflict does not predict divorce. What does predict divorce is the pulling away from each other, the disconnection, the turning away. That is what is the root cause of all relationships. When you stop being connected, when you stop plugging into your partner, when you turn around, when you turn away, when you turn your back on them, that's where the problems lie. And so conflict is an easy place for us to really start breaking down who do we become in conflict, because that really is the height of when we turn away from our partner, right? In those dark, cold, blustery, isolating, brutal times, we turn away naturally. So let's break down that turning away piece so it becomes less frequent and less intense. Now, one of the ways we can do that, the biggest way we can do that, is really establishing some ground rules. When we establish ground rules with our partners, we don't just have a free-for-all fight. We don't conflict to the death. We aren't gladiators in the arena just, going at it. There are a set of ground rules that we both agree to and we abide by. It is like a social contract that we develop and we adhere to protect ourselves and each other from some of the aggressiveness or the harsh words or maybe the mean-spirited passive-aggressive digs that we try to get in there, the Achilles heels that we try to, pinch really hard in those moments of conflict to try to win. Ground rules are really a chance for us to say, what are we going to be like in conflict? Conflict will happen. Who do we want to be in these times? And so looking at this chart below, it is not definitive, as all of my charts are not definitive, but it really does give you a starting place for some typical ground rules. Now, there's a column on the left and it says, we do this. That means you do it already. Those are ground rules you have either agreed to verbally or you just naturally adhere to those. And then on the right-hand side, the column says, we'll add this. So in this situation, you're going to be reading these and deciding which ones are the ones we're going to add. Maybe you use I statements and you are very good at not talking about the other person, but perhaps you don't sandwich. What's a sandwich? So when you want to give negative feedback or a criticism, constructive or otherwise, creating a sandwich means you say something kind and loving, then you give the feedback, and then you add another kind and loving sentence after, right? So these strategies are, a multitude of opportunities for you to decide who do we want to be in conflict. And if you decide to do the sandwich strategy, if somebody uses it in argument, you could really say, wow, you just used the sandwich strategy. That's awesome. And all of a sudden, the temperature, the fieriness and the anger just comes down. You just de-escalated by one person using the strategy and the other person acknowledging that you really are trying to protect my feelings and give me feedback that might be considered harmful or hurtful to my ego or to my abilities, to see myself as this other person. So I want you to just go through this list, identify what you do as your ground rules right now, and then find some things that you can add, because there's always things you can add. Even if you have a fantastic relationship with each other, you can always add a couple of more strategies to say, you know what, actually, I've noticed our fights have become a little bit more like this. Do you think we should try maybe this strategy? Do you think we could set this ground rule? You know, so that if anybody at any time needs a timeout, we're able to take it, right? Because sometimes I want to leave and I say, I'm leaving, and you're like, no, you're not going anywhere. Stay here and let's deal with this. But I'm really flooded and I cannot think straight. And so it just devolves. Can we set a ground rule that if somebody really does need to pull out of the conversation to cool off and to kind of get their head back, we allow that time? John Gottman, a researcher here in Seattle, has studied through his love labs like everything about relationships. And the one thing he found is it takes 20 minutes for an adult person to fully calm down from a big altercation with their love partner. 20 minutes. So if your partner says, I need a moment, and they walk to the other room, and you're counting on your watch, and then 2 minutes later you storm in after them to continue, you know, saying what your point of view is, they haven't calmed down. They haven't stopped flooding. The hormones have not stopped flying through their blood, right? 20 minutes. So this might be a time where you say, I think we're gonna take let's take a half an hour break. I'm gonna make some lunch. Why don't we come back in half an hour? Or, you know what, I'm gonna have a shower. If you wanna go for a bike ride, that would be perfect. Let's come back and talk after dinner, right? Because the point is not to win. Conflict with your partner is not about winning. It's not about being right. It's not about taking charge and being on top. It is a partnership, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, both facing towards the life of your dreams together. And if somebody needs to win, that is a very different outcome that you probably won't want to be in this course for, because I don't want there to be a winner, which implies there's a loser, which implies that somebody is going to be sacrificing themselves for the other person in a negative and unhealthy way. We don't want unhealthy ways. We want genuine, wonderful, magical, magnificent, soul-filling partnerships in your love relationship. We want this to be the most profound adult relationship of your life. We want this to be the foundation of all great things that you do in the world, all amazing things you do in your job, all of your fantastic parenting strategies, all of your great community service, all of your legacy starts from being held in love with your partner. There are no winners in that. It is absolutely a story of equals coming together. So I hope this was helpful when you think about conflict resolution and setting ground rules. I really want you to go through this exercise and add a couple of ground rules that you might not have thought of before or you haven't used. And if you don't have any ground rules and it's kind of a free-for-all, gladiator till the end, let's set some ground rules. Decide on 3 to 4 today. Just pick them, decide on them, negotiate them, put them up on the wall, and when conflict happens, refer to them and say, oh, remember, we're going to try to use I statements like I feel hurt when you blah, 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 or I feel embarrassed when you tell your friends, dumb things that I do, right? So we're going to try to use the I statement. We agreed on that. Oh, right. Okay. Because we're in it together. Awesome. I will see you in the next video. It has been such a pleasure to be here, and continue to work in your workbook. I will see you next time. Bye.